Hello everyone. So someone asked me the other day if I had made a video about developing the transition phase of muscle ups, and the answer was no, that I hadn't. So I thought I would make my own video about everything that I learned in the process of developing my own muscle up and everything that I think that you can use to smooth out the journey of your own acquisition of the skill. Now, I learned the muscle up without bands. That's quite key. And so this approach is going to be one which goes for the same idea. How can you develop this skill without bands? So through the video, I'm going to be talking about sort of different elements of what you need to approach, what you need to do in the foundation phase, and how you can develop certain sort of like skill-specific movements and areas of strength which you need to expand on. So without any more talking, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that I did is that I made sure my pull-ups and dips were completely consolidated. And what I mean by that is that I took my pull-ups from looking like this to looking like this. Now, the key thing that I developed there was my ability to retract my shoulder and bring the bar into full contact across my chest. That was really, really key. And also then making it so that I could pull really, really high, so that actually I could take the pull up from being more so than just on my chest, but bring it down to like lower on my rib cage. So aiming for kind of like here. Now, I did that just with doing 3 sets of pull-ups on a Monday each week, and then I did supplementary exercises to develop both the retracting action, my ability to pull my shoulder back, and then I also worked on the grip, so my ability to express force down through my hand and into the bar. So I'm going to show you the 2 exercises that I used to develop those now. So I think this was a really significant part of the process for me. This is a seated cable row. Okay, this is a fantastic way to train your ability to retract your shoulder blade. Okay, and from the previous part, I've talked about how the retraction in combination with the false grip is what allows you to put your power into the ring that's going to generate that upward force and let you ultimately come on top. Again, this will start to click into place and make more sense when you get to the actual process of how I learned the movement later on in the video. But that ability to retract is so essential, and to be able to be really, really strong there. Okay, so what I wanted to do is like, okay, how can I build this retraction strength? How can I stimulate that part of my body the most effectively? And that meant coming off the rings and going to a situation where I'm seated, I'm really strong, I can support myself with my legs and my glutes and really, really load the retraction action. Okay, so that's why we come to the seated cable row. And what we're going for here is five sets. The first 2 sets are kind of warm up weight, so 8 reps. And then you're wanting to work with a weight where you're doing 5 or 6 reps, so it's heavy. Okay, now I'll show you the action. I've not got it on a massively heavy one right now. But so look, here's what's key. With this one, I've got these leg thingies, which is quite good. But you don't have to have leg thingies. So you can just do it like that. So now watch my back. I'm going to come. I've got the weight in my shoulders now. I've set myself strong through my glutes. So this is, my core is engaged, right? I've neutralized this lower part of my body. I'm using my glutes and my core to keep myself here. Then I'm just going to press through my feet, sort of almost sit upright, and now I'm feeling the weight pull my arms, pull me into that protraction. Okay, from here I'm going to retract my shoulders. I have 2 things that I think about when I retract my shoulders. For me, it's about just here where the tricep ends, pinching that in and pulling my shoulder blades together, and then also my sternum coming up. When I bring my sternum up though, I still keep my lower back engaged, so I'm not bending my back. I'm pressing my sternum. It's called thoracic extension through the upper part of the back. Okay, so that's the first part of the movement. strong and engaged. Allow it to pull your arms, then retract and pull in, full contact with the body. Now you've got to think elbows on a journey past your body, okay? So it's in contact. If we saw it from this way on, it would be like this. Look, there's no gap. It's all happening really close and into me, okay? And then I sort of do the opposite thing on the way back, okay? So I'm here, allowing that length, but engaged. Retract, pull, let it go back, let this come to here. Here, retract, pull, protract. And here I'm not passive really, I'm almost pushing because then I still have activation in my shoulders. I'm not going limp, okay? Trying to reach outwards, then I can pull and back in, okay? Keep that line with the shoulders and back there, okay? So be all across through this part. Keep that really strong, proud, open chested position. 8 reps, 8 to 10 on your first 2 sets. That's going to gauge your weight. And then 5 or 6 on the last 3. Hold for 3 seconds on the 5th or the 6th, you know, the last one. Hold. 3, 2, 1. The whole body, not just the arms. This is very key. It's the shoulder. The shoulder moves, the elbow moves. Okay? I'll give you one more exercise at the end of the video that can help you to learn this a little bit more. But I think that this was really, really the key for taking my pull-ups from being here to actually being able to close the gap and touch the chest to my bar. Touch the chest to my bar, touch the bar to my chest. Okay, and like I said, I did this with one set of pull-ups. Sorry, not one set. One session of pull-ups on a Monday. Three sets, working towards 10. All of those trying to get as close to the bar as I possibly could. And then making up the rest of my reps with just as close as I could get. And then I did this probably like the Thursday or the Friday. And I was doing other stuff. I learned this muscle up kind of on the side, okay? And it was just those 2 things. Really intense stimulus on the Monday, really intense stimulus on the Thursday or the Friday when I was fully recovered. And I just went round that and round that and round that. And it got better every single week, honestly. But yeah, so this is the key supplementary exercise. So now we're going to move on to the other end of this, which is how to develop the strength in your forearm for the false grip. Okay, let's go. Okay, so this was the second exercise I used as a supplement to really, really develop the power in the grip and the retract that opened up the way for the skills pathway. Okay, I got this exercise from a guy called Rob Blair, who's had a world record in grip sport where you hold like a hook and do a deadlift with it. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like over 200 kilos. But anyway, this comes from Rob, who is the champion of grip. So you're going to use something like this. This is just a small weights bar. Like you can quite often find these in studios where like studio classes happen in, like in a pure gym or something, with teeny weeny weights on the end. So this is literally only 1.5 kilos on here. And I can actually even just use this one on its own to begin with. I don't know how much this bar weighs. It feels like potentially 5 to 7 kilos, okay? Right, so here's the movement. It looks like this. We're gonna bring ourselves up to here, pop it on our knees like this. Now I'm retracting. I'm using that retraction action. I'm engaged in my glutes and my core. So all of that's completely set in place. I'm also pressing through the floor like this here, okay? And then what I do with the hand which is on the bottom, I just let it fall away to the side and I'm pressing on that to stop it from going down. And I bring it down to horizontal, using my shoulders, using my legs, pressing on this. And I'm literally just gonna hold it there. 10 to 15 seconds, press down, bring it back up. And then you swap. And you do it again on the other side, okay? So retracted in the shoulders, drawn in the core, strong in my legs, and I let it kind of drop through my hands and off to one side. Then immediately lots of pressure on this hand, press, and I'm holding it in place, retracting through the shoulders, really, really strong. Again, 10 to 15 seconds, and then I pull it back up, okay? It's gonna give you an enormous fire up in your wrists. And do start with something really, really light. Like you could even start with a stick, like a I can't remember what they call them. Yeah, a stick. It's got some silly technical name. It's a dowel. What's a dowel? A dowel is a stick. All right, but once you start getting a bit stronger, you can pop this on top, okay? And that just immediately ramps up the intensity of the situation. Okay, again, I'm using my whole body for this. 10 to 15 seconds, bring it back up on top. This one can be a little bit pinchy in the elbow, so you need to progress it relative to your own position and your own strength. But yeah, and what that does is that's almost just like, that's pure strength in the forearm and in the grip, okay? Which is going to translate over amazingly into your false grip training, which I talked about in the ring rows, okay? And what we're doing here, like I did with the last exercise, the retract, we're isolating different key features of the movement and finding the situation where we can develop them individually to the greatest degree. I know that I need to be powerful at this point to be able to get all of the power in my lat into my hand, okay? So I want to develop all of my ability to pure contractile ability here, my retraction here, so that when I initiate the movement, bam, so much force goes down through the ring that it displaces my body upwards, okay? That's the idea. Okay, so I need to talk about ring rows as well, because I'm going to talk about like false grip in a moment relative to learning the movement, but the ring rows are where I really started to learn how to do my false grip. So the whole while that I was training the pull-ups and the dips, before I'd even started attempting any kind of negative, ring rows were a big feature of the work. And the idea was just simply to be able to touch the chest like that. And in this moment, I was also working on this retracting action, which I'll talk about, we've already talked about it a lot. I'm filming this video out of sequence, so I'm not quite sure where I've put them yet, but whatever, you'll have the picture by the end, okay? So I was just working towards 3 sets of 10 on these again, and trying to touch my fist to my rib cage when I went through the motion. We started with this at the bottom, and then rotated to be here at the top, like this action, okay? Also focusing on having a really pronounced retraction at the bottom. So I'll be here and retract up and then go. And it's from there that I'm doing the work. Now, I then used this situation to start training the false grip. So I put my hand over the top. So you see this, the wrist is like nooked into position here. My hand's there, yeah? So it's really resting on the side of my hand and in the wrist, okay? And then I got myself there, like that. So look, it's almost like a right angle. And I set myself up here and did my ring rows like that with the false grip. Now, I used the mace bell exercise to actually develop most of my strength, but this is where I got used to implementing the false grip action on the ring and actually feeling what it was like to move, to do some kind of movement pattern, with that being the key feature. The other thing I got from this is that's like, I engage with the ring, lock it down, keep the straps really taut. Imagine you're pulling the bar that the ring is attached to, or whatever it's attached to. You're engaging with that object by downward pressure, constant downward pressure, that links to my shoulder blade and ultimately my lat. So it's like this. If I try to show you, up through my body, engage, back, down, the whole thing. So that it's not just my hand. It's my hand communicating with my shoulder, communicating with my core. So my whole body's involved with this. My glutes are engaged. That's how I'm locking in, and that's how I'm expressing so much force through there. Okay? And again, I just worked up to 3 sets of 10 on that. I didn't add very much weight. It's just about getting that wrist used to it, and also develop a bit of skin on this part. But the more you do that downward pressure in the engagement, the more the pain goes away. It's more when you're limp through this part that it really, really hurts, you know? And it will hurt a bit when you first start doing it. But yeah, that's everything I did with those. So I think now I'm going to move on to talking about the the actual negative process. The negative process makes it sound really bad, right? But like how I actually learned it, that's what I'm going to move on to next. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about like the actual transition phase itself and everything that I learned about it. I think the key thing for me with a muscle up is before I could do it, I thought of a muscle up as going like this, going up through the ring. So that's the line that it travels, because it makes sense, right? Because when you do a pull-up, you experience yourself going straight up and down. But this muscle up actually has a different direction, okay? It actually goes this way, so backwards, then it curves around, and then it goes up again. So it goes, for me, what I felt, it goes a lot further back than I was expecting. It goes really far back over here, then it comes back this way, and then it goes up. In terms of what you feel, the way your shoulders go, okay? And that's kind of the movement. I'll see if I can show you from here. So I'm there, back, forwards, up. And that's that's sort of the trajectory. Now, I learned all of that in reverse. So I got my dips to the point where I could sit really comfortably at the bottom. It was super strong, okay? And then the first thing I did was I just tried to drop off the back and catch myself underneath. So got to here and then just without touching the floor, okay? So no attempt at technique or anything, just get underneath them and take control. And I started doing that at the end of my dip set. So I do like 5 dips. On the 5th, I'd go underneath and just get used to catching myself, all right? I'm not thinking about false grip. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm doing a very crude, sketchy version of the movement, okay? This part is in super control, and then I'm just going blip underneath, okay? The next phase for me after that was just trying to use my strength to slow that down. Now, I did that by slowing down the beginning of the backwards curve. So if the dip is the line down, there's the C-shaped curve, and then there's the pull-up. Let's break that into 3 sections, okay? So this is one line through which you can express force. This is another line which you can express force, the pull-up, and this is a third line. And this is the one where we need to learn to express force, to be strong, okay? So in this moment, I'm not really being strong through that line. I'm going from one area where I'm strong into another area where I'm strong, and just letting myself fly through this part. So then to start getting to the point where I can be strong in this section, I just have to try and slow it down. And I don't want to think about technique at this point. I want to use pure muscular ability, okay? Because the technique that people talk about is like the refinement and making an efficient pathway, but we have to establish the pathway first. You have to be sketchy. Imagine you're drawing a picture, okay? You sketch it out, you do the details later, yeah? Okay, so I'm here to the bottom. Now I want to start controlling it a bit more as I go through. You see that? So I haven't flown at any point. I haven't dropped at all. Now actually, I naturally went into having my hand on top there. But that's just because it's become a habit. You might start to drop to there, okay? And then, after I'd sort of had that amount of control, that's when I did start to refine the pathway a little bit and thought, right, how can I make this work better for me? And there were concepts of bringing the rings close and in front. And this was actually super key for me, I think. When I started to bring the ring close and in front, that's when I started to get the idea of pushing down on it. So I'm actually constantly expressing force downwards on the ring. And then I started stopping halfway in my journey on the way down. So before, I was coming here and going with control the whole way down. And then I got to a phase where, watch my forearm. My forearm is up. And then I got to here and I started stopping here. Hold, 3, 2, 1. And then with control underneath. So I have these 3 phases of the forearm. And I was trying to control it here. At this point, actually keeping them really difficult, flies away, not going to be able to hold it. So I talked about physical contact. My whole inside of my arm is actually touching my body when I'm in that moment. Yeah, that's what it would look like if you could get up close to me. From there, I would be like 5 dips, pause 5 seconds, release down. Then I started to get into the idea of moving backwards and forwards, okay? So I thought, well, if I can stop there, maybe I can move forwards again, okay? So I was here, I'd get down to here, I'd bring myself to there, and I thought, can I get back on top there and move through the dip again? And so then that started to develop. So I'd do 5 dips, 5 seconds, bump back on top, last dip, maybe 4 dips at that point. It starts to get quite energy draining. And I keep looking at my wrist because you can see it's quite sore on that point. In terms of the pain in the wrist, actually, I found the more I pressed down, the more I connected through my whole body, there was less pain. It got much, much more manageable. And then I had my kind of real breakthrough, which is going to refer back to the 2 supplementary exercises I've already talked about, the protracting bench press and the retracting cable pull, okay? I realized that I could make this movement happen by just thinking about those 2 positions. So at the bottom of my dip, my chest was forwards and over the top of the rings, okay? But I was massively protracted and drawn in. And then when I was to go under the rings, I was massively retracted. See, they're here. Look where my hands are. Protraction, retraction. I'll show you that movement. So, up, and now I'm on my pecs. My pec muscles, I'm forward. Now I'm going to retract into my lats and protract. Okay? That takes quite a lot of strength at that point. So I didn't do the pull straight back up straight away. But packing back into my lats, like pulling those muscles together, yeah? And then the rings ended up there. And I do holds at that stage, okay? And that was actually how I started really building the strength and understanding of the pathway. Once I'd done that quite a few times, then I was into a phase where I got the itch to actually start trying the full movement. And this backwards thing was really key. So I would be underneath, and by this point, I had fully developed the use of the false grip, which I will talk about more at the end. But it came about symptomatically of developing the movement because I kind of needed it in order to make some of it possible. And that's when I started to really develop it, rather than thinking about it prior to having this pattern in place. It was a necessary factor to move me forwards, okay? So I get myself under the rings. I'm standing on my feet now to show you, but there. Get myself under here, bent arms like this, and I'd only hang to about here. So I'm already super packed in, super engaged through there. And then the motion was to go like that, like just to get my pecs up to there. And you can see that is that retracted position, okay? And I started doing these like really powerful muscle ups into my set of dips. So I'd go for a muscle up and then do my set of dips. So it's always relative to the dips on the rings, you know? So I'd be here and then go for my dips. And then I'd hold and come back down again. I just did something which reminds me as well. When I'm doing all of these negatives, I would always bring my feet up or my knees up. So to hold the position like with my knees here, I found that just really helped me with this idea of squeezing in. So let me show it to you a bit more clearly. Here, and then as I came, I'd be like that. Okay? So that my whole body was involved in this idea of holding it in, bringing it as close to my belly button as possible, the center of power in my body. And then they sort of just snowballed from there, to be honest. I carried on doing the muscle up movement, but I'd only ever do like 3 in a session, so I did it into my sets of dips, and that's where they happened. At this point, I was still doing all of my pull-ups, and the muscle up on the bar came or the muscle up on the rings came way sooner than the muscle up on the bar. But ultimately with the bar, I used the same process, so I'll show you that now. So I actually found with the bar, I was a lot more afraid of it because I felt really high up when I was on top of the bar. And like I had to come further away from it than I really wanted to. But I started by just jumping my way up there. So I'd go like, just to jump up, okay? And then I'd bring myself down to here. Oh, I've got another one here. And then hold myself there. And see, my legs are in. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Underneath, hold, and then down. So it was pretty much exactly the same process. And then I just kept going on the retracting with the cable pulls and the protraction push. And I did this thing where I just put a muscle up at the beginning of the set of pull-ups. At this stage, when I really unlocked it on the bar, I dropped the number of pull-ups I was doing significantly. So before, I'd been going for 3 sets of 10 on the pull-ups, or like I was doing sort of like 7 or 8 reps to touch chest to the bar. I dropped that down to 5, just 5 clean reps touching chest to the bar. And that's when the muscle up really like emerged on the bar for me. And I was still kind of doing them on the rings. I really think that sort of like working it into the dip on the ring is what really helped it appear. And then on the bar, it kind of like, I don't think I did like loads of sessions on that, to be honest. The bulk of the work was on the rings. Like I didn't train that negative pattern for like months on end. I think I probably only did it like 4 or 5 times in a session. And then I went back to doing my my sets of pull-ups, dropping those down to 5. And I was majorly concentrating on other processes in my work. I was concentrating on my handstands and stuff. And the muscle up on the bar just came actually. But the bulk of the strength development happened on the rings and in those supplementary exercises. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about it in terms of the way that I developed it and the way that I understood it. Now, I have used banded methods with people that I've worked with, but really I think if you can work these negative processes, these negative patterns, and gain access to the strength like that, as well as using the supplementary training methods, like for me it's unlocked without bands. And I had a much clearer sense of it in my body because of that, I think. Yeah, I'll move on to my concluding notes now. Okay, one more little exercise here, which is going to, again, it's about building the retraction in the shoulder and also the connection into the wrist. This can be a part of your warm-up if you're doing this kind of training. So I come to a position like this, squatted. I've got the band in tension, okay? So I let it pull my arm, and then retract, which again, the 2 cues are chest up, shoulder back, chest up, shoulder back, okay? And then retract, twist and pull. Retract, twist and pull. Okay? And I just go for 8 reps of that, and then I hold it here, really, really strong. And then the same on the other side. 8 reps, and then 5-second hold on both arms. And that's just a really nice way to kind of get that movement starting to happen before you move into any of the other work that you're going to do, before you do any of your pull-ups, any of your dips, any of the supplementary movements. Yeah, fantastic. Right, now I'm going to conclude. Do you think it's funny how I keep saying I'm going to conclude and then do another exercise? I just remembered that I hadn't talked about the core very much, but that was like significantly important. I think the fact that my core was already so well developed is what made it possible for me to go down all of these pathways without very much resistance. Now, I've talked about dish hold a lot in my other videos, so you can go and find me talking about dish hold somewhere else. But whilst I was developing the muscle up, the key core exercise we did was like I started learning dragon flags, which I'd never learned before. So you need some kind of pole, something behind your head. And then we line up with one fist to the pole. Then I kind of just interlace my fingers, but I'm popping that around there, and then elbows together, and I'm thinking about crunching in towards my hips. So obviously I can't actually do that, but that's the intent, right? Then I bring my hips up and in line, like I'm trying to thrust them towards the bar up here. So here, crunch and thrust. And then in the first instance, you can begin with one leg crossed over like that. And you want to really press that knee outwards, really engage your glutes. And the first thing you can do is just lower down. So up, press, engage, lower down. And the idea is to just stay in control the whole way down as best as possible. Try to think that your elbows are always trying to connect to your hips. Even as your hips travel further and further away, you're still locking in, still trying to connect. And that's what makes the movement powerful and actually gets you used to connecting your shoulders to the whole of the rest of your body, which is super important in the muscle up actually. So you get core, but you also get this coordination exercise going on in this situation. So you go down with the one leg, and then you can go back up with the other one. So if I did this one, so I go down, you should go slower than that, and then I swap it back up, and then go down again. Okay, and I stayed on those for ages because you can get a lot out of it with the cross leg. But then the next progression is to just go for a straddle. I'll show you that in a moment. And then you can go for a full. But I did some up and downs. I got to the point where I could do up and downs just because if you do all of these negatives, you'll be able to go back up as well. But I didn't push for it. It was just like, after about 8 weeks, I was like, I wonder if I could do that. And I could, for one. These were very, very secondary. I'm not sort of interested in them. You're just doing your 3 sets of 3 and moving on. But yeah, so you've also got your straddle, which looks like this. 6 feet wide. Again, hips, and then down. And then your full position, like this. And pulling back up. And for the pull back up, it's a crunch, crunch and thrust, pull, squeeze your hips to your elbows whilst keeping your legs really straight. It's quite tricky. Okay, unless I think of anything else, I am now actually going to move on and conclude the video. Okay, I think I covered everything that I wanted to about how I learned to muscle up and how I feel like, you could learn as well. Everyone's journey is unique, right? So if there's anything in the video that could be helpful to you that you could plug in, then I hope it does help and I hope it's useful. So my concluding points, I think everything that I would have to say about muscle up, starting with before it, you need to get those pull-ups to chest to bar. Chest to bar is essential, and actually getting them really high. Just keep developing that. And I worked towards 3 sets of 10 for a long time, just trying to get the contact. I did that for a lot of months, like maybe three months or so without using any weight at all, and then added a little bit of weight. Again, I didn't use loads of weight because I was prioritizing chest contact. And I would always do until as many chest contacts as I could. So if that was 4, and then I'd do 3 more reps afterwards and then always stop. So I never worked like particularly lots of reps. And I was doing that cable retract work in between as well. So that was really, really key for developing the pull-up to just make it as good as it can possibly be. And then the dips on the rings. And those actually developed more organically than the pull-ups did. They just kind of worked themselves out. But I did have that bench press that I was doing, building that protraction power. And at the bottom, and the ring is protracted. I didn't actually talk about like the ring position that much. There are quite a lot of particularities with it. So I think perhaps I'll make another video on that or something. I'm not going to go back right now. But yeah, those 2 things, those are the components, right? And then those 2 are straight lines. So a pull-up is a straight line and a dip is a straight line. But when you go for a muscle-up, your pull-up, if this is the pull-up and this is the dip, the pull-up changes to being on that angle. So it's like this. And then you have this curve back into the bottom of the dip. Okay, so the channel is there. Goes like that. That's sort of the movement pattern of the muscle-up. And then key things about the actual transition process from my experience of it. This backwards part was a lot further back. It was way further back than I expected it to be. It was a big movement, really big movement is what it felt like, right? And I learned it primarily through negative, through going backwards down from the dip. And I connected all of those negative movements into my dip practice. So once my dips were really strong, and I'm talking like 8-ish reps for really nice full depth, like shoulder to touch the ring. And again, that came after like 5-6 months, something like that, maybe 4 or 5 months. Then I started dropping underneath. I did that whole process. That's how that developed. Okay. And all the while we were doing the ring rows as well. The ring rows were where I learnt to use the false grip in a movement pattern, but I developed the strength for the false grip with the bar thing. I call it sexy fishing, but I don't think that's its actual name. But we can call it sexy fishing. That came from exercise that came from Rob. That's where the strength came from. Learning to use the position came in the ring rows. Okay, there's different key thing, and they were both important. The retracting action also very significant in the ring rows, and I was doing press ups on the rings as well. Just normal press ups, asserting the protraction at the top. That was all important. And then where did I get to? I got to the point where I was stopping on the transition down, where I could actually hold myself physically here, always downward pressure, arms in close, little T-Rex arms, okay? And then once I was getting that really consistently, I actually started doing the one where I would come back on top. So I wouldn't go all the way underneath, like look where my forearm is, I'd get to here and then go back there. Sorry, yeah, like that. And then full movements underneath. And by that point, I was feeling like I had the itch to try it, you know? And when I describe that, it's sort of like you've done so many of the preparatory movements. I can only describe it as an I wonder moment. It's not an idea. It's not sitting at home going, today I'm going to do a muscle up. It's going in on the day, warming up. You're going through your motions, and your body it'll be a good day. Your body will feel really smooth and fluid, and you go, oh, I wonder if I could just get underneath and just have a go at it. And that point will present itself after a certain degree of training and conditioning, and that's when you kind of like crack it, in those moments where you just ask the question, you investigate. But it's a real double-edged sword, me telling you about that, because it's better to assume that that's not a point you're going to arrive at. It's not a point you're going to arrive at. It's an unknown, invisible moment that will present itself to you. You will know when it is in your being, but you can't intellectualize it. You can't decide when it's going to be. It's the result of the work in your body. So yeah, forget I said it, but also know that that's a thing which happens. And that's a thing which has happened to me with a lot of skills. There's just this day where you go, oh, I wonder about it today, you know? But it's not, you can't assume when it's going to come. All you can do is you keep doing the work, and it happens at the strangest times. It can happen after a period of not doing very much. It can happen logically after doing a big block of work. But yeah, you can't predict it. But what you can know is that it will happen, absolutely, if you keep doing the work. And doing the work can sometimes be backing off. I think the last thing I need to say is that for me, this muscle up acquisition happened 2 sessions a week. That was when I did the bulk of the work, and that was 1 session doing the calisthenics, 1 session doing the muscle active, the supplementary stuff, going to really intense stimulus in both of them. And then I was doing other training in between. I was doing a lot of handstand work, I was doing a lot of running, but like you can do it with very, very minimal work. Like I did it with very, very minimal work. So there's no reason you can't as well. Sweet. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said. So we will leave it there. Hello, it's like the 5th time that I've ended the video and then come back for more. There is more to be said. I'm an online coach. If you're struggling with this process, then I can help you. I can help you find out where you are in that whole system that I've just talked about. And we could find out what's going on for you in your process. You might have bridges to cross that I didn't need to, and then I can learn and help other people more. So you can communicate with me via Instagram, which is @_coach.jamie_, or by my email, which is jamie@coachjamie.co.uk. Shoot me an email, shoot me a message, and let's just get you doing this skill. Let's get you enjoying the process. And then, what's the other thing? If you enjoyed this video on YouTube, then give me a like or a comment or a subscribe. And also, like, I made this video because someone asked about it. So if there's anything you want to know about, ask me a question and I might make a video for you. All right, brilliant. But beyond that, now it's the actual end. It's actually finished. It's actually done. So yeah, bye-bye.